In July 1099, after weeks of relentless siege under the burning Levantine sun, the walls of Jerusalem finally gave way. What followed was not a measured occupation, nor a negotiated surrender, but a moment that would echo across centuries, an eruption of violence shaped by faith, fear, and the unforgiving logic of medieval warfare. For those inside the city, it marked the end of one world. For those who entered, it was seen as the fulfillment of a sacred vow. Nearly 3 years earlier, in 1096, thousands of armed pilgrims began moving eastward from Western Europe. Their journey was not spontaneous. It had been set in motion by a call issued at the Council of Clermont in 1095, where Pope Urban II urged Christian knights and nobles to reclaim Jerusalem, a city held at the time under Muslim rule. The appeal combined religious devotion with promises of spiritual reward, including the remission of sins. It also drew on long-standing tensions between Christian and Muslim powers, as well as the internal dynamics of European society, where warfare, land scarcity, and religious zeal converged. The early waves of this movement were disorganized. Groups of peasants and minor knights set out ahead of the main armies, often lacking supplies or discipline. Many did not survive the journey. It was only later, as more structured forces gathered under experienced leaders, that the campaign gained coherence. Figures such as Raymond of Toulouse, Godfrey of Bouillon, and Bohemond of Taranto led contingents that would eventually converge on the eastern Mediterranean. Their path was long and difficult. Crossing through Byzantine territory, the Crusaders navigated a complex relationship with the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, who sought to use their military strength to reclaim former imperial lands. While there was cooperation, there was also mistrust. The Crusaders continued southward into Anatolia, where they encountered resistance from Seljuk Turkish forces. Battles such as the Siege of Nicaea and the Battle of Dorylaeum tested their endurance and coordination. As the campaign progressed, attrition took its toll. Hunger, disease, and desertion reduced their numbers. Yet the core of the army persisted, driven by a combination of religious conviction and the leadership of its commanders. By 1098, they reached Antioch, a major fortified city. The siege lasted several months and was marked by severe hardship. When Antioch finally fell, the Crusaders themselves soon faced a counter-siege, narrowly avoiding defeat. The capture of Antioch was a turning point, but it also revealed divisions within the leadership. Some sought to consolidate their gains rather than continue toward Jerusalem. Others insisted on pressing forward to complete what they saw as a sacred mission. Eventually, a reduced but determined force resumed the march south. By early 1099, the Crusaders entered the region of Palestine. The political landscape they encountered had shifted. Jerusalem was no longer under Seljuk control but had recently been taken by the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt. The city was defended, but its garrison was not prepared for a prolonged siege. When the Crusaders arrived outside Jerusalem in June 1099, they faced immediate challenges. The surrounding terrain offered limited resources. Water was scarce, and the summer heat was intense. The defenders had secured the city's walls and controlled access points. For several weeks, the Crusaders attempted assaults but were repelled. Recognizing the need for siege equipment, they began constructing towers and battering rams using timber gathered from nearby areas. This required coordination and labor under difficult conditions. Religious rituals also played a role during this period. Accounts describe processions and fasting, reflecting the belief that spiritual preparation was essential for success. On July 15, 1099, the Crusaders launched an assault. Siege towers were moved into position, and attacks were concentrated on weaker sections of the wall. After intense fighting, a breach was made. Crusader forces entered the city from multiple points, overwhelming the defenders. What followed has been recorded in various contemporary sources, both Christian and Muslim. These accounts differ in detail and perspective, but they agree on the scale of violence that occurred. Many inhabitants of Jerusalem, Muslims and Jews among them, were killed in the aftermath of the city's capture. The exact number remains uncertain, as medieval records often used symbolic or exaggerated figures. However, historians broadly agree that the loss of life was significant. It is important to understand this event within the context of medieval warfare. The sack of a city following a successful siege was not uncommon. In many cases, if a city resisted and was taken by force, its population could face severe consequences. While this does not diminish the suffering that occurred, it reflects the norms and expectations of warfare at the time. For the Crusaders, the capture of Jerusalem was seen as a moment of profound religious significance. Many entered the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in acts of devotion, marking what they believed to be the culmination of their journey. Godfrey of Bouillon was later chosen as the ruler of the city, though he declined the title of king, adopting instead the title Advocate of the Holy Sepulchre. The establishment of Christian control over Jerusalem led to the formation of several Crusader states in the region, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem. These states would persist for nearly 2 centuries, though they were often under pressure from surrounding Muslim powers. The events of 1099 also had lasting consequences beyond the immediate region. They contributed to a cycle of conflict between Christian and Muslim societies that would continue through subsequent crusades. The memory of the siege and its aftermath became part of historical narratives on both sides, shaping perceptions and relations for generations. Economically, the Crusades opened new routes and contacts between Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. Trade expanded, and cultural exchanges occurred, though often within the framework of conflict. Politically, the Crusades influenced the development of centralized authority in parts of Europe, as rulers sought to organize and support such large-scale expeditions. Socially, the movement of thousands of people across continents had profound effects. It altered demographics in certain regions and introduced new ideas and practices. The participation of various social groups, from nobles to peasants, highlighted the broad appeal and impact of the crusading movement. At the same time, the violence associated with the Crusades, including the events in Jerusalem, left deep scars. In historical writing, these events are often examined not only for their immediate impact but also for how they have been remembered and interpreted over time. Different sources emphasize different aspects, and modern historians work to reconcile these perspectives through critical analysis. The Siege of Jerusalem in 1099 stands as a complex moment in history. It was shaped by religious motivation, political ambition, and the realities of medieval warfare. It brought about both the fulfillment of a long-sought goal for the Crusaders and immense suffering for the city's inhabitants. Understanding this event requires careful consideration of its context. It cannot be reduced to a single narrative or simplified explanation. Instead, it reflects the interplay of belief, power, and circumstance that defined the era. In the centuries that followed, Jerusalem would change hands multiple times. Each transition carried its own consequences, but the events of 1099 remained a reference point, a moment when the city became the focal point of a wider conflict that connected distant regions and diverse peoples. Today, the siege is studied not only for what happened, but for what it reveals about the past. It offers insight into how societies mobilize around shared goals, how conflicts are justified and conducted, and how historical memory is formed. The walls that once stood against the Crusaders have long since been rebuilt and reshaped. The city itself continues to hold deep significance for multiple faiths and communities. Yet the events of that summer remain embedded in its history, a reminder of a time when belief and battle converged with lasting consequence.